Having been double jabbed and being one of the first to take the Pfizer vaccine, I have, after several months, critically appraising the data, speaking to eminent scientists in Oxford, Stanford, and Harvard, speaking to 2 investigative medical journalists, and being contacted by 2 Pfizer whistleblowers, reluctantly concluded that this vaccine is not completely safe and has unprecedented harms, which leads me to conclude that it needs to be suspended until all the raw data has been released for independent analysis. Although it's not my traditional area of expertise, my understanding, looking at the data, of the mechanism of harm from the vaccine is that the spike protein, which we believed initially to be localized to the arm, appears to be distributed throughout the body in every major organ system for several months, causing either a direct reaction through toxicity or an autoimmune reaction. And that is the most likely explanation behind the mechanism of harm from the mRNA products.
When vaccine efficacy was declared at 95%, relieved governments gave the green light. But Dr. Mallhotra argues that the methodology was flawed.
Relative risk reduction is a way of exaggerating the benefits of any intervention, clearly which would be in the interests of people trying to sell you something, in this case the pharmaceutical industry. So if, for example, you have 1,000 people in a trial that didn't have the vaccine versus 1,000 people that did, in the placebo group, in the dummy group, you may have 2 people dying, and in the intervention group, you may have just 1 person dying. And that's a reduction of 50%. 1/2 is a 50% relative risk reduction. But actually, you've only saved 1 life out of 1,000. So the absolute risk reduction is only 1 in 1,000. It's a big difference. The guidance has been for many years that we must always use absolute risk reduction in conversations with patients, not just relative risk reduction alone. Otherwise, it's considered unethical.
The accusation is that governments acted on Pfizer's relative risk figure of 95% efficacy, when the absolute risk was a mere 0.84%. In other words, you'd have to vaccinate 119 people to prevent just 1 from catching COVID.
So we were basically sold on something that ultimately, in retrospect now, was very, very misleading.